Today in Therapy Corner, I'm sharing 3 management tips to boost your research productivity. So I'm combining my experiences in academia and in management consulting to bring you the top tips. Basically, a few days ago, I ran a survey on Twitter and I asked academics to tell me what types of businessy training they wish they had had in school. And over 60% of them say they wanted more training in management, whether it's management about process or management about people. So I decided to make a video on some of my favorite tips. And let me tell you a bit about my 2 very different experiences. On the one end, I was a lab director, I was a PI for almost 5 years at a research lab in the psychology department at Ohio State. I ran a lab studying anxiety, depression, emotion regulation, and mindfulness. I had 6 graduate students, over 20 research assistants, and at any given time we were working on 15 to 20 research projects. So we were a fairly productive lab. And after that, I joined a big 3 management consulting firm, Boston Consulting Group, or BCG. And basically, for those of you guys who don't know about management consulting, we're basically firefighters for big companies. When they have a problem or they have a situation that they want to change, let's say that they want to develop a new product or they want to enter a new market, they hire management consultants who come very quickly, they quickly identify the problem, they come up with solutions, and then they implement them. And you can see how the pace here is very, very fast. Sometimes we would go in and solve really complex problems involving millions and millions of dollars in a number of months, sometimes even weeks. This is very different from the way we do things in academia, where it can take months and quite frequently years to get any one project done. So I've had these 2 very different experiences working in this very slow, very precise, very meticulous environment, in this very fast environment in which precision is still important, but there's like a much more clear-cut trade-off between precision and time. The first piece of feedback is to iterate, iterate, iterate. And what do I mean by this? Many of us academics tend to be perfectionistic. We have this sort of reluctance of getting anything started until we have a very, very clear idea of exactly what we're going to be doing. For example, we don't write a manuscript until we have read every single paper in that area, or until we have a really, really good sense of everything we want to say. And don't get me wrong, it's really good, it's really important to be thoughtful, but at the same time, sometimes you just have to get started somewhere. Otherwise, you get trapped in your own head, in your own perfectionism, in your own procrastination, and your own anxiety. So start with an idea, whether you're writing a paper, whether you're developing a new experiment, whether you are running a data analysis. No matter what you do, start somewhere and know that you're going to keep on iterating and building. Make sure you do set up a cadence for iterations, that you plan it, that you schedule it in your calendar. Because what also happens is that many people have no problem starting with something messy, but then they don't keep building on it. They don't have the discipline to keep on creating. And what happens is that they end up sitting on like a number of projects and a number of papers and a number of data analysis that never get completed. So the key here is to combine starting somewhere, being okay with a rough idea, being okay with something not being perfect, and also having the discipline to keep iterating and to keep building with a good cadence. Also, what is very important is to bring in other people. All of this iteration cannot happen in isolation. You have to rely on the feedback from others. You have to incorporate what other people think. And I don't mean just people in your lab or your colleagues. I mean thinking outside the box. Talk to people in other departments. Talk to grad students or professors you know in other areas. Talk to your friends, your significant others. See what they think. Talk to outsiders, because the opinion of outsiders can be really, really valuable, because they don't have all the biases that people have when they know a field really well. In fact, they bring a sense of curiosity. So they're going to be asking the right questions that are going to help you gain new perspectives. So trust me, they're going to help you create better research. My second piece of advice is to synchronize. And you can do this, for example, with Scrum meetings, which are part of Agile principles. So what's a Scrum meeting? It's basically a very quick meeting in which every team member quickly updates everybody on their progress. They flag dependencies, they identify hurdles, and they problem solve together and agree on steps forward. It's a way of sort of coming together and making sure that everybody is being the most efficient they can be. The key to Scrum meetings is to focus on process. So this is not the time to talk about content. So if you're writing a grant application, for example, it's not the time for everybody to start discussing this one reference or this one point, but it's actually the time for people to say, okay, I wrote this section, I'm planning on having it finished by tomorrow, I'm going to pass it on to this other person on the team, and so on and so forth. And there's usually a Scrum Master or just somebody running the meeting who's going to make sure that people are sticking to process and also that they're sticking to time. Again, it's very, very important that the Scrum meeting doesn't take forever. Now, how frequently you have those Scrum meetings, it really depends on the context. The cadence doesn't necessarily matter, but what matters is that you stick to the form, which is basically everybody coming together, sharing their process, sharing their progress, flagging dependencies, and agreeing on a path forward. So you may want to include the Scrum meetings within the lab meeting, and that makes perfect sense, and it might be the most efficient way of doing it, because that's one agreed upon time that you know everybody on the team can make. What I would say here is, if you do this, just make sure that you clearly delineate what part of the lab meeting is sort of the traditional part, where you talk about content and you talk about various issues within the lab, and what part is sort of like this very hyper focus on process piece. And you can set up an alarm, you can timing, you can write something on the board, whatever it takes, basically to make it clear to people that this is a clean break between the first part of the lab meeting and the second part that is more agile based. One of the best pieces of advice that I got over the years was that whenever there's a problem and you bring it up to the team, you also come up with a couple of solutions. And they don't have to be perfect, and in fact they shouldn't be, because you shouldn't spend too much time coming up with the solutions. You should be focusing on escalating the problem quickly. But coming up with some solutions allows people to begin to move past the problem and to begin to creatively problem solve. So even if they're not perfect, they're going to start pointing people in the right direction. And from the emotional perspective, they're going to make people feel less negative, because you're bringing a problem to them, but you're already focusing on the positive side, right? You're already focusing on, here's what we can do about it, here's how we can move forward. And this is very much related with the first piece of advice that I gave you, which has to do with iterating. This is the same idea. You don't have to come up with the perfect solution from scratch. Just come up with any solution, and then you can build, you can iterate, and you can work with other people to find the best path forward. This brings us to the end of today's video, and this is just the tip of the iceberg. There's a lot more stuff that I would love to tell you about in terms of management practices that we can leverage in academia. So if you have any specific questions or any specific topics you'd like me to cover, please let me know by leaving a comment in the section below. And as always, if you enjoy the video, don't forget to like, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, and don't forget to share with people. You can do so in a number of ways. You can share the link to the video, or you can share my posts on social media. I'm Dr. Amelia Aldeo, both on Twitter and on Instagram. Thank you so much for being here today, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.